western edge of Nebraska's Sandhills, 3 lakes remain outside the modern world. A sea of grass, undisturbed since time before man, insulates them from the busy fingers of progress. An ancient underground ocean provides pristine waters for big bass and northern pike. That's what lured my old friend and I into making the 6-hour trip. But we came away with more than we expected.
Can you see us?
My old friend Greg and I try to fish together at least once a year, and like everybody else, we're trying to find places that have a lot of fish but don't have a lot of fishermen. This year we found what we were looking for in the Nebraska Sandhills at a place called the Crescent Lake National Wildlife Refuge. The refuge is a rare and solitary place, a sanctuary within a sanctuary. The lakes sit inside a massive 45,000-acre bird sanctuary that was established in the 1930s by the U.S. government. That sanctuary sits inside the Sandhills themselves, which provide another buffer against the modern world. Those buffers, and what I imagine is dogged determination and vision from its caretakers over the years, have allowed the refuge to stay wild. The native grasslands are the same as they were long before man was around to see them. And the water bubbling from the ground into Blue Creek dates back 12,000 years to the Stone Ages. Those waters come from the Ogallala Aquifer, which is one of the largest underground oceans in the world. The aquifer's water was formed during the last ice age, millions of years ago. It's an ancient place, and when you get up there, you sense it. It's not oceans of fun. The banks aren't mowed, there's no paved parking lots or sidewalks, no camping stalls with electrical outlets, no marinas or fishing piers. But there's also no car alarms or lawnmowers. There's no leaf blowers or semi-trucks or train horns. There's nobody rocking hairbands out of their camper. In Nebraska, we're blessed with excellent state park and rec areas. They're so good they often draw a crowd. On a nice day, our parks are buzzing. There's campers and tents, big boats, paddle boards, kids, dogs, bikes, barbecue. They're all paddling, pedaling, splashing. It's like the Who's down in Whoville. All that commotion doesn't make for the best fishing, and there's not much peace and quiet. An old rancher told me once, he said, "It's not that I don't like people, it's that I like cows and horses and dogs better." I don't know if I go quite that far, but it's nice to have some space sometimes. To get space, you got to get off the beaten path, and that means it's probably not going to be easy, and the further you get off the beaten path, the harder it gets. Such is the case with Crescent Lake. We're not talking Pitcairn Island here, but it is a bit of a journey. For starters, the refuge is in western Nebraska, kind of in the crook of the Panhandle where the Panhandle starts, about an hour and a half northwest of Ogallala. That's 6 hours from Omaha and about 3/4 the way across the state if you live on the east side. But Greg and I were on our annual mission to find peace and big bass. So we lashed my kayak down and we crammed all my gear into Greg's SUV and we headed west. Interstate 80 is a grind and it's not the most interesting trip, but once you get off of it at Ogallala and you head up northwest up Highway 26, everything changes. You're in the Sandhills, so the scenery gets to be a lot better, the traffic's light, there aren't so many trucks, and it's really kind of a chill 45-minute drive up to Oshkosh. We stayed in an Airbnb house in Llewellyn. It had a full kitchen so we could cook our own meals. It had 2 full bathrooms, so each of us had our own half of the house. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was clean and it was comfortable, and it was $90 a day with no cleaning fee. It's tough to get one hotel room for that kind of money. Llewellyn's 12 miles southeast of Oshkosh on Highway 26, and Oshkosh is where you head north to go up to the refuge, and that's where the drive gets a little more interesting. It's 28 miles from Oshkosh up to the refuge, and the access road is dirt. It's graded well, it's well maintained, but it had rained for a few days prior to us coming out there, so it was pretty muddy. There was standing water for 50 to 60 feet in spots. Greg's SUV is four-wheel drive, so we didn't really have any issues, but we did slide and slosh around pretty good. The access road heads mainly due north. There's one jog in it. It's beautiful country. For one thing, you're in the Sandhills. The Sandhills are the largest sand dune formations in the Western Hemisphere. They're covered with grass, so it's not like you're in the Sahara Desert or anything like that, but you're not going to see anything like it anywhere else. You're also in cattle country. There's a lot more cows than people, for sure. In Garden County, where the Refuge is located, there are 30 cows to every person. The Refuge is a series of wetlands, ponds, and lakes, and out of its lakes you can easily drive to and fish 3. Crescent Lake, Blue Lake, and Island Lake. Crescent Lake's the largest at just under 1,000 acres. It's the most refined, with a concrete boat ramp and an outdoor privy. Blue Lake is the least civilized and most remote. It's the smallest at around 380 acres, and it's the deepest. It has a 20-foot hole, but it's mostly around 12 feet or less. Island Lake's about 3/4 the size of Crescent Lake, and it's the most shallow. At most, it's about 6 feet deep. Greg and I decided to fish Blue Lake first, and it's about an hour drive from where we were staying out to the Refuge, so we were up before the birds so we'd get a good start in the day, and we got out there just a little bit after sunrise. Blue Lake is on private property. The rancher who owns it has an arrangement with the state that allows us to fish the lake as long as we are good stewards of the land and close the gate that you go through. It gets to be a little bit Twilight Zone out there because there's no signs or anything to tell you how far you've gone or where exactly you're supposed to go.
Where are we taking a lefty? I think that's probably it. I think that's.
But sooner or later we popped up over a dune, and there it was, Blue Lake in all of its glory. 300 acres of unadulterated fisherman's paradise. Or so we thought. It had been windy for a few days prior to us coming out there, and that wind had churned the water into chocolate milk. Visibility's inches. That led to a tough day of fishing. It wasn't for lack of trying. We tried it all. We fished the top. We fished the bottom. We fished the middle. Catching anything?
Yeah, a bite.
We cranked. We chattered. We jigged. We spun. No luck. Nothing. Not a dang thing. Come on, fish. Nada on the fish. Beautiful place.
To ourselves. Nobody else out here.
Yeah.
Us and the pelicans.
You know, but it was still a good day. It was just an uncommonly peaceful place. It's an incredible place to paddle. I'd go back in a heartbeat. Peace and quiet's great, but we did come out there to catch fish. So on our last day, we decided to go to Island Lake. Island Lake is the most shallow of the 3 lakes, if you recall. And because it was shallow, I didn't hold out much hope for catching fish in it, frankly. Well, fortunately, I would be wrong on that. It turned out to be the opposite fishing experience than we'd had at Blue Lake. The water had cleared up a great deal, and that got the largemouth to start biting. Greg decided to go south into some reed beds that were 50 to 60 feet offshore. He wound up catching 8 largemouth, and they were all in the 2 to 3 pound range. And he put 8 in the boat. He also missed a few. He caught them on a small spinner with a Colorado blade and a little minnow on the back, and he also used a jig with a crawdad trailer. He had one of those mornings that we're all looking for. I did not. I chose to fish the standing and down trees on the north side, and the only thing I caught over there were down and standing trees. So it was a painfully slow morning, at least a slow morning for catching bass. If you were out viewing pelicans, it was a great day. I ran into more than 100 pelicans in a pod along the north shore. They were surprisingly quiet for large birds. They just kind of eyeballed me as I paddled by, and I just let them be. And up to that point, I hadn't had a great week for bass fishing. I caught a few, but for the past day and a half, I've been skunked. So I decided it was time to change my luck a little bit, and I made a change of scenery, paddled for about 15 minutes across the lake over to the east shore, and my hunch paid off. I caught the heaviest largemouth I've ever caught. She was hanging out in about 6 feet of water, 20 feet offshore on the inside of some reeds. She was 5 pounds, 5 ounces. She was kind of short and stocky. Not the longest bass I've ever caught. She was 19 inches long. I caught her on a bluegill colored chatterbait with a ragebug trailer. She was a fun fish to catch. She really just made my week. I've said this before and it's probably hard to believe, but even if we didn't catch any fish out there, I would still go back because it's just a beautiful place to paddle. The solitude and the quiet are just something that you just don't find much this day and age. And the natural surroundings were really refreshing. It was nice to fish on a lake where you couldn't see any houses or there was no traffic or joggers or anything. It was just the outdoors. So if you don't mind getting your truck dirty and getting jostled around a little bit, it's well worth the trip. Thank you so much for watching my video. I appreciate it. I really do. As long as you've made it this far, I would love to have you as a subscriber. All you have to do is just click the subscribe button. Don't cost nothing. It's easy to do. No baggage. And I'd love it if you'd let me know what you thought of the video, so leave a comment or two for me. Other than that, take care and God bless.